is driving home with Tone. It is 7 o'clock in the morning. Jesus Christ. And I have a tendency when I'm driving home to, I'm sure most people do, just to like let my mind wander and start thinking about shit. So I was thinking about a conversation I was having with a friend last night about how I approach women, right? And the context of the conversation is irrelevant, I guess, actually. But she said something like, oh, well, like, when you're seeing someone, doesn't your, like, your prowess go away naturally or whatever? And I was telling her how I never really have that. I mean, it's pretty rare where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go out and fucking find a girl. Like, I feel like that was something that was more prevalent in my 20s, like my early 20s, when I went through this fucking phase. But like now, I don't ever really like set the intention of like, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna like find a girl or whatever. For me, like, I get that that's such a natural thing in our culture. I mean, probably in the world, I don't know. I mean, I live in America, so I'm limited to that exposure. So like, I'm not knocking it or whatever, but for me personally, trying to force a dynamic with a human being that I don't even know if I like seems so incredibly unnatural. And I was drunkly trying to explain that to her, and the way that it came out was, I just told her that my relationships have a tendency to develop really organically. Like, I meet someone somewhere at work or out and about at a friend's house, like whatever, and as I meet a lot of people and we click as friends, which is cool, or at least in a friendly way, and there's naturally that desire to talk a little bit more, and we get to know each other a little bit better, and if something romantic develops out of that, then rad. But the foundation of that is so different than the experience that I think I see on TV, or I watch a lot of my friends struggle with, where, you go out and you set the intention of romance, which is a lot of fucking pressure, and you meet some stranger and expect that is going to bode well for you, and sometimes for some people it does, and I think it depends on how, here's where I would say there's an exception to that. If your intention is simple sex, which I am very, like, incredibly open-minded, non-monogamous, married, sexually incredibly liberal, like, whatever, to me that is another human exchange that we have that's really, really intimate, and I think it's a lot more satisfying or gratifying for me when there's some history, attachment, understanding of who the person is. Not to say that flings aren't fucking fun or can't be, but generally speaking, I'd say I've had much more gratifying sex with people who I have known, whatever. But back to what I was saying, if your intention is simply to go out and, have a hookup, get some ass, like whatever, get your dick wet, or whatever, however you call it, then I think that our culture has, shifted in a way over the past, 100 years or whatever, that's pretty accommodating to that particular behavior. So I'm definitely not speaking to that guy or girl or person or whatever. I'm definitely more thinking of people who are like out in bars trying to find husbands and they end up dating weirdos, or out at the club trying to pick up a girl and then they get like, you know, this crazy girl who's nothing like they thought she was or whatever. And for me, that comes back to trying to inorganically force a dynamic. And fuck, it's only made worse by the internet, because on the internet we can, I mean, I think even on the internet it's hard for a creep to not be a fucking creep. But on the internet what we can do is we can pause. So me in person, romantically, I'm generally pretty, I don't know, like I'm like outgoing and funny. I'm not really that funny. I try. But I mean, I have a good time, and the people I'm with generally have a good time, right? But I'm also sort of reserved when it comes to emotional conversations, and only because I really like to process things. I don't like to just say whatever the first thing is that comes to my mind, or I shouldn't say I don't like to say the first thing that comes to my mind, but generally when it comes to something that I am having, if I'm having a conversation with someone that I'm really invested in, I don't come to my truth all the time really quickly. So you take how I am naturally and you put that behind the platform of text message or I don't know, Tindering or OkCupiding or whatever people do, and I'm going to seem like a very different person because I have the time to really think about how I'm going to respond to something. And you know, I have a friend, and it's funny because her perception of me is that I only tell her like the cool things or whatever. She says the sexy shit, and not in a sexual way, but like the things that like are fun or awesome or whatever about my life. And then it's really funny because if we're hanging out and we're having a conversation about something and I leave and I'm driving home, then I have a tendency to text her when I get home these really long messages that are in response to something we were talking about earlier, because I've had time to think about it and I've had time to process it and I've had time to come to like my truth or an opinion or whatever about what we were talking about. So my point is that when people are trying to date or whatever, or find a partner, or get to know someone or whatever, and their main interaction is through a platform that allows you to have that pause. If you're someone like me, if you were to meet me over text message or internet emailing or whatever, I'm going to seem much more, probably a lot better spoken, probably a lot more insightful, maybe a little bit more vulnerable than I will in person. And that in and of itself, even though it's not my intention, could be misleading to someone, you know? And then I'm sure there are people on other, you know, that hit other marks on that spectrum where it's not necessarily an intentional thing. It's just who we are over the internet and over text and all that shit is not necessarily who we are in person, you know? So, I don't know. My thoughts on dating, in a nutshell, on a drive home, are, do it, but don't initiate. Don't initiate with that intention. It's a lot of pressure. And I don't know. I just think it's a really inorganic way to develop something meaningful. Not always. I don't know. What do I know? I mean, my credentials are nothing past personal experience, you know? I'm happily married. I have been for a little over 2 years, to a woman I've been with for 7 years, who I've known for 11. We were acquaintances, then we were friends, then we were really, really good friends, and then something developed out of that I don't think either one of us ever saw happening. And I didn't marry someone I was attracted to and then get to call them my best friend. Like, I legitimately married one of my best friends, and I'm pretty happy. So for whatever that's worth, that's part of what's shaped my opinion today, you know? I mean, I'll probably make another video on marriage at some point, because I also think that's a pretty unnatural thing that we try to do. Not to say that it's not, like, beautiful and really special in the challenges that it presents. At least it has for me. The challenges it's presented for me personally have been eye-opening and forced a lot of introspection, and I don't know, it's been a pretty good time. But yeah, I don't know. Relationships are hard. I think we make them harder, and I think that we should maybe not do that so much. Kick back, meet people, like lots of people. Not like meet people under the premise of like turning into a relationship, but meet people under the premise of connection and getting to know other human beings, and getting to be tolerant of other people and learning how to interact socially. Because, you know, something else that I've learned in my adult life is most of us are shy, awkward motherfuckers. Even the most outgoing people. You know, I'm a pretty good example of that. I'm super outgoing. Like, I'm very like, hey, how are you? Like, I'll engage with people. I'm really friendly. I don't really clam up, but I feel the feelings associated with being shy. I just don't let them dictate my behavior. And that's something that I stopped doing when I was early teenage years. I was like, I can't, because I'm never gonna. Anyways, so yeah, and I think that learning how to acknowledge the feelings and move past them is super important, for one, and for two, just being buddies with people is nice. And then if those buddies turn into extra buddies, awesome. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, so I'm gonna end it. But questions, comments, fuck yous, whatever, all welcome. I don't care. If I don't know you, you probably won't offend me, so speak freely. And I'm gonna keep doing this thing for a little bit here. It's pretty fun, even if it's just an outlet for myself. I don't care. I think I get like 4 views per video on average. Totally okay with that. Totally. Anyways, I don't have a cool tagline yet, so I'm gonna just press the button now.